joy and excitement of Minnesota Vikings football is in the air. To the end zone, yes! Yes! Touchdown! Let's go!
Vikings Pregame All-Access presented by U.S. Bank. I'm Mark Rosen, live from U.S. Bank Stadium. I'll be joined by Ben Lieber and Ron Johnson in just a few minutes as the 0-2 Vikings take on the 2-0 Tennessee Titans here. Noon kickoff at U.S. Bank Stadium. The Vikings season, quite honestly, is on the brink before the baseball season begins. They need to do something to change the narrative, to change the landscape, to change the feeling of the confidence level of this football team and of the fan base out there as you listen to the show, as we are an hour away from kickoff. We have lots to talk about. We'll be breaking down this game between the Vikings and the Titans. We'll have in-house responses from Ben Lieber and Ron Johnson. Keeping in mind of the 45 points the Vikings have scored this year, 32 have come in the fourth quarter, not in a positive way. They mostly scored at so-called garbage time. Their opening drives have been successful, which is pretty amazing. They have actually outscored the Packers and the Colts by a combined 7 points in the first quarter. The issue has been the second quarter, where the Vikings have been outscored 34-3. Kirk Cousins had 3 interceptions and 2 safeties in that quarter. They've held the ball, by the way, for a league-low 40 minutes. So with all the changes they've had on defense, with all the injuries they've had on defense, it's still incumbent upon the offense to show up, find a way of keeping the ball out of the hands of the Ryan Tannehill, Tennessee Titans, and, of course, Derrick Henry, who is a monster. Derrick Henry, by the way, before we go on with what's going on with Tennessee, let's take a look at the inactives of the game today. Our monitor's out at the moment, but I do know that quarterbacks Cam Dantzler and Mike Hughes are out. Backup Tajay Sharp is out. That means Chad Beebe is in at the wide receiver position. Jay Osborne is also out. So the Vikings, on top of everything else, with Anthony Barr out for the season. Danielle Hunter still on the inactive list. There we go. Now we're taking a look at him right there. The big ones then: Sharp, Hughes, Dantzler, Osborne out. So the Vikings definitely shuffling the deck a little bit. And for Tennessee, Brown, the wide receiver, has been out for the second straight week. That's the big one for them. Right now, we're going to hear from a guy who's really popular during the home games when the fans are allowed inside U.S. Bank Stadium. Of course, that's DJ Skee, to give us a little look at what's going on at U.S. Stadium right now.
DJ Skee. Migos in the building. We are Migos. Yo, what's crackling? This the homie Ice Cube. What's poppin'? Kendrick Lamar. My dude, my day one partner. DJ Skee. What up, boy? Yo, what up? It's Travis Scott. Yo, what's going on? This is Drizzy Drake, and I just want to let you know this is an exclusive. DJ Skee. Young Flame, he's sick of my turn this function.
We got this new guy, DJ Skee. He was kind of the Oprah of the hip-hop community.
I saw Skee the other night. He's amazing. He did my first interview.
Yo, Skee, hit him with this.
To everybody tuned in all across the globe today. We're out here repping for Skol Nation. This our anthem for the day and all season long.
And thanks to DJ Skee for warming us up here at US Bank Stadium. I'm joined now by Ron Johnson and Ben Lieber. And I want to say, guys, in a very loud US Bank Stadium, the fact that there aren't any fans in here, I find myself screaming, which I really shouldn't be doing as a guy who's been in broadcasting for 45 years. But they are pumping up the volume a little bit in here today. I guess they're allowed to get the decibel level up a little bit, guys. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have heard about that, and thankfully so, because the first time we were here for the home game, I'm like, this 70 to 80 decibels is not loud enough. This stadium rocks when there's people in here, so I like the energy, I like the feel, even though I feel like I have to yell.
Yeah, Ron, I think it's a little louder than it's going to be because this is louder than it normally is when there's 70,000 people in here right now.
I was going to say that, yeah. For an offensive guy, you hate this because you cannot hear anything. But guys like Ben, they love this. The metal banging against heads and, crazy stuff and throwing each other into the lockers. That's what defensive guys. Offensive guys, you want it nice, calm, and cool. So it's going to be interesting to say.
We got an offensive guy and a defensive guy here. So let's talk about, on both sides of the football, what needs to change the narrative for this football team after not only going 0-2, but of course not really being competitive in either game?
Honestly, it's just identity. We talk about two tight end sets. We talk about the run game. The pass was always secondary when you thought about Stephon Diggs' big plays. You thought about Adam Thielen's deep balls. You thought about Kyle Rudolph after play action. I need to see more of that. We want to see some Dalvin Cook, some setup runs, some like Ben's going to say, some intentional downhill runs.
Yep.
But you have to get the run game going because you can't run play action without a run game. They can figure you out. So that's what we have to see from this offense.
Yeah, the Vikings have held the ball for a league-low 40 minutes, which is hard to imagine over two football games. What else? As battered as his defense is, how do you expect him to play it at really much higher level when you can't even keep the offense on the field?
Yeah, we talked about this in the pregame show on Fox. They've been down. They've only had 8 plays with the lead on offense. They've had 37 plays being down by 2 scores against the Packers. 49 plays in total. So you're talking about my math sucks right now, but you're talking about 12 plays with just like either even to start the game because it was a 13-play drive, and that was it. After that, they were down by 2 scores.
So, Ben, as we look at Kirk Cousins here, what does he have to do? What is he, in concert with Gary Kubiak, to keep this offense flowing?
Well, for me, it really is just going to come down to the simple and easy wins. Don't be afraid to play a little bit of what Ryan Tannehill's doing. It's a check down game. Be efficient. Last game for Tannehill, he had 6 incompletions, and everybody's talking about how great of a game he had, and all he really did was just take what the defense was giving him. Don't try to press the ball downfield when it's not there. It's okay to hit a tight end. It's okay to hit a running back on a swing pass, a check down. Just move the chains, get the ball in the hands of your receivers to make them get the yards, not you through the air.
Yeah, it hasn't been a problem in the first drive. We've seen them execute pretty well other than having to settle for a field goal last week at Indy. It's what happens afterwards. So Gary Kubiak, Ron Johnson, said that he took it upon himself. He said, I got to put Kirk in a better position. When you're an offensive coordinator who's been around as long as Gary Kubiak has, how much can you change right now? They have the personnel. They can shake things up. Justin Jefferson, we're all waiting to see as his rookie season develops. Does he have to be kind of a key guy that Kirk now relies on a little bit as well?
Yeah, and so for Gary Kubiak, if you think about the Denver Broncos, everybody talks about Elway, but what they forget is Brian Griese was actually pretty good under Kubiak's system. I went back and actually watched because Brian was at Michigan, so I went back and watched a little bit of his Denver games. It was really simple. Slants, hitches, digs, curls. keep it simple. And I think Kubiak hopefully is going to do that because he has receivers like Adam Thielen, he has Justin Jefferson, and he has B.C. Johnson, and they can run those routes. He also had a guy by the name of Shannon Sharp, and he had Byron Chamberlain. And you remember Byron Chamberlain?
I love Byron. 87.
You look at Byron Chamberlain kind of being the Kyle Rudolph, and you look at Shannon Sharp being the Irv Smith. What did he do? He tangled those two guys one by one, and he would utilize linebackers having to cover those two or safety picking the wrong guy. I want to see Irv one by one off Rudolph more often in pass sets because we haven't seen much of Irv this season.
Ben Lieber on defense, if you were here at U.S. Bank Stadium, you definitely need a program to check out the numbers. Who are those guys? Because it keeps changing by the hour, seemingly. We know that Gansler's out, Hughes is out, Boyd is back in today. What can we expect from the secondary? And more importantly, what do we have to see up front in order to help those guys out?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we look at how to fix this defense. It's not just the secondary, not just the corners. It's really the whole defense. Linebackers have to provide better underneath coverage in zones. The defensive line can't get blown off the ball, 3 or 4 yards in the running game, and they have to create some penetration in the passing game as well. But what we're going to talk about just the corners, this may be the game that bodes well for them because this is a heavy personnel offense. I don't think they want to get, especially with the injury to A.J. Brown, I don't think they want to get in this game where they're going to ask a lot of our nickel personnel. It's going to come down to our base personnel and our base corners.
What are your initial thoughts as we take a look at number 20, Jeff Gladney, the number 1 draft pick, about sort of what the role he's being thrust into right now and how he has to handle it, not just stopping the pass, but also coming up and helping out the linebackers?
Well, and you know what? I saw a big change from him in week 1 to week 2. And you expect to see those sort of improvements, but he really just went back to playing the base fundamentals. If he was supposed to stay outside leverage on a play, he stayed outside. He wasn't trying to do too much. And I think those little wins like that can build confidence for him. I know he's feeling a lot of pressure right now, but if he can just go and just do the simple things, just take care of your business, I think he could have a big day.
One more defensive question before we switch over to Ron again. The loss of Anthony Barr for the rest of the season, how do the Vikings adjust, not just personnel-wise, but X's and O's? Does it change kind of the way they have to approach their defensive schemes?
Yeah, we may see Ngakoue kind of take over that position. On third downs, we saw a lot of Anthony Barr mugging the A-gap with Eric Kendricks, either rushing or dropping out in coverage. Ngakoue can do that. He did a little bit of pass dropping in Jacksonville. So maybe, just maybe, he becomes that sort of wild card, that joker player in those situations to get some pass rush. But no doubt, in base personnel, we're going to miss Anthony Barr. He's a big time player in that weak side B gap. We don't know who we have there quite yet.
Here's a look at C.J. Ham. The Vikings coming on the field here at a louder U.S. Bank Stadium as they get ready to take on the Tennessee Titans. Ron, when you've been in situations, take us back to your career a little bit too, when you're fighting it and you know things aren't going well in the locker room and you have a long week after a game like you had last Sunday. What's the mindset individually and collectively about kind of get things turned around when you know that your season's kind of on the brink? You're already at 0-2.
Yeah, you don't want to and Glenn Macy used to call it the little man. He would say the little man's on your shoulder, which is basically like the devil. Don't let the little man creep in your ear, making you doubt your teammates, making you doubt. And we've seen this here before. You don't want the offense and the defense going at it, where the defense is mad because the offense is putting them back on the field. They have to carry their own weight at this point. And so when you look at Dalvin Cook and his ability to run the ball, 26 carries, 113 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. So what does that mean? He's actually more explosive than Derrick Henry. He just doesn't have the touches. You give Dalvin Cook 56 touches, I guarantee he has 250 yards. He does have 3 touchdowns, and so they can use him a little bit more. He is, and Ben brought up a good point, smaller backs have the ability to take hits because they don't have a huge target. Where a guy like Derrick Henry, he's going to get chopped at the knees. Dalvin Cook is a feature back. You paid him the money, give him the ball. And I think that will prolong some of these drives, and that'll get the clock going to kind of change that time of possession battle they've been losing.
Yeah, getting back to the comparison between Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. Henry leads the NFL in rushing yards and attempts, as we just saw. He did last season. He's getting more work than ever. 2 weeks in, he leads the NFL with 56 carries. He's been grinding it out. His longest run's been 14 yards, I believe. He goes, 247, 250? You recall, who does he remind you of? Anyone you've played with that, that size of a running back, you don't see very often anymore.
It's like Eddie George with Jerome Bettis' weight.
That's a great comparison.
It's crazy. Eddie George, we played the Titans a bunch.
Right.
Eddie George was tall, but he was slim. He was big, but slim. Jerome Bettis, we played the Steelers a bunch, was just a big bowling ball. Derrick Henry is both. So with Derrick Henry, what you can't do is let him get going. You have to cut off his angles. You have to make him bounce it outside. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to go downhill, and he's not going to make a lot of moves. The biggest thing about that, what you said, the grinding it out, it's like playing John Madden. When you have a guy you know is going to get you 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, you just hand the ball to him. Why? Because 3rd and short. That's what you want. Tannehill wants to be in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 3. If you put Tannehill at 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, he's more likely to make mistakes. And that's what we saw last year. That's why he took so many sacks, because he was in 3rd and 8 a ton last year.
Right.
This year, Vrabel's like, you know what? Let's give the ball to Henry and see what happens.
Ben Lieber, you faced a lot of running backs in your time in the National Football League. Does anyone come to mind that reminds you of Derrick Henry? Because you face some big loads. And what would be your way of attacking, as Ron said, when you go after a guy like that who just wants to wear you down?
Yeah, I love the Eddie George comparison. I think that's spot on. You can maybe throw in a little bit of the outside speed of a Sean Alexander with the same sort of height and weight and the way he looks. He's a much tougher runner than Sean Alexander was. But, I'll just kind of piggyback off of what Ron was saying, that the way that you combat this running offense, and this is the part that actually scares me. They've been attacking the perimeter of their own offense quite a bit, and that's why you saw just the very average 3.6 yards per carry for Derrick Henry. They need to get him downhill. They need to reevaluate their philosophy in their running game, because it's just okay at this point. It's not great. And the thing that scares me is if they can get downhill, which they can probably do against our defense, that's where they can get some big chunk yardage plays, and that's where you can really wear down a defense.
We're taking a look at quarterback Ryan Tannehill, the Tennessee Titans, who was the NFL Comeback Player of the Year. Keep in mind the Titans started 2-4 last year. They finished 9-7, then went on that unexpected playoff run, ending Tom Brady's run in New England, then, of course, stunning the Ravens and Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. That was shocking as any NFL playoff result, you guys, that I think we've seen in a long time.
Well, and I think for him, he's been given the keys to this vehicle, and you can tell that he plays very comfortably. He lets it rip when he needs to let it rip. And I think it's amazing how you can go from one organization to another and feel refreshed. And he has that authority where the head coach and Mike Vrabel's saying, look, this is no longer Marcus Mariota's team. This is your team. We've got a great running back behind you. We have some weapons around you. Just be efficient, and we'll win these games.
We just had a seismic earthquake inside U.S. Oh, wait, that's Derrick Henry showing up on the field. Does he look that big to you, Ron, out there? Is he like,
oh, yeah.
He's, my God.
So
the hips.
The thing I look at is watch when he stands next to a guy like Eric Kendricks. Eric Kendricks has a nice size for a linebacker. Not super tall, but he's a big football player. When Derrick Henry is going to stand up after Eric Kendricks tackles him, just watch the size difference. He's massive. He's a big, but he carries his weight well. He runs behind his pads, and as tall as he is and as big as he is, he looks stiff, but he has really weird hips where when he gets hit, he has the ability to get back vertical and forward and keep going. So you can't just try to take out one leg. A shoulder or arm tackle is not going to get him down. You have to bring all your weight, and you have to hope your teammates help you. Because one guy, it's going to be hard to get him down with one guy. We've seen that with the Ravens. Earl Thomas became a Twitter meme after that game.
That's right.
Because Earl Thomas looked like a lead blocker. Earl Thomas was running the same direction as Derrick Henry because he had got turned around and run over. So it's just, that's how big he is.
Well, the Vikings hope to see number 22 a lot on the sidelines today, not on the field. That's incumbent upon, of course, the Vikings offense keeping the football a lot longer than they have the last couple of weeks. A reminder that at every Vikings home game, an unoccupied seat at the 50-yard line is watched over by members of the Minnesota Armed Forces. This year, even though we have no fans at the game, we will continue that tradition to honor all the prisoners of war or those missing in action. So we want to thank them for their service, of course, every day of the year. All right, getting back to the game today, as far as like time of possession and everything, Ron Johnson. It's odd to say this, but after that first series, the Vikings just haven't done much. Do you think the Vikings need a quick tempo it more? What do they have to change with Kirk Cousins? He knows how good he can be, but it's more orchestrated. Does he no huddle, up the tempo? What do you have to do?
Well, you can't go back to the Packers game. Let's throw that in the trash. Let's go to the Colts game. The interception on BC Johnson.
Yep.
They came to the line of scrimmage. It looked like man, and then they ended up in some kind of cover 2 zone. BC ran a man slant, not a zone slant. A zone slant, you slow down a little bit, or you take it high and you try to hit that window where we've seen receivers come out the back end. Kirk Cousins needs to come to the line of scrimmage a little bit earlier so he can give his guys time to diagnose what the coverage even is. Maybe motion a guy, a fake motion. Like we've seen Peyton Manning do that. We see Tom Brady do it. We see Drew Brees do it a ton. Fake motion some guys to maybe say, okay, if he follows you, we know it's man. If they do the little linebacker talking and the guy's moving, it's zone. But you have to be able to see that. You get paid a lot of money too, so I want Kirk Cousins to kind of get comfortable, but he has to get the ball out of his hands quicker too. That's the other thing.
Ben Lieber, take a look at Justin Jefferson, number 18 there. We just had a look as well at Chad Beebe. Is that a bit of a surprise to you that he's been activated today?
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise because I was going into this game thinking that he wasn't going to be activated. So, maybe they're tipping their hand about what sort of personnel they're going to be looking for. Maybe it's not going to be this 2 tight end set, 21 personnel with the fullback. Maybe they want to spread out this defense a little bit. Maybe they want to get some speed out there. And, going back to what Ron said about BC, not understanding and progressing through that disguise look by the defense, maybe feel comfortable with Chad now, have another year of development, understanding man versus zone, adjusting on the run. Maybe there's a little bit more trust factor in those situations than BC right now.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the combination of Chad Beebe, BC Johnson, Jefferson, Ron. Something has to give. They have to. Tennessee hasn't taken a look at these guys very much either.
Yep.
But really, the offensive line has to give Kirk the opportunity. They want to roll him out a little bit more because Cousins has been pretty good rolling out with play action.
Yeah, well, last year's play action left. When Kirk rolled left, we always like, why would a quarterback roll left and he's right-handed? Well, it works. Stefanski figured that out. That when we roll Kurt out left, teams aren't expecting that because he's a right-handed quarterback. So, but the same thing, when he's rolling out right, he's got to get the ball out of his hand. Ben brought this up on Fox. Throw it early. Throw it to the guy and let him run with the ball. Don't wait for him to be wide open, and that's what he's doing.
When you've seen, both of you, when you've seen Kirk Cousins at his best, what is he doing that he's not doing right now? Or is it just a matter of personnel?
Saints game. He was anticipating every throw. The deep ball to Adam Thielen, Thielen had to run probably about 20 more yards to get up under the ball. The interception to Thielen against the Colts, he was standing back there waiting for it like a punt. So if you're going to make those throws, anticipate the throw. If it's an out route, think about Aaron Rodgers. He was getting the ball out of his hand in those out routes so quick we couldn't do anything. That's what Kirk Cousins has to trust. He trusts Adam Thielen, we know that. But now you have to trust. And whether maybe him and BC BB had a good week and they're like, all right, let's activate BB because that's another guy he trusts. I don't know, but he has to gain some trust with his other weapons.
Ben, before we let you get out of here, too, has it been a combination of things, maybe even starting with Michael Pierce opting out because of health reasons, then Danielle Hunter with the injury, Everson Griffin not coming back defensively, and then obviously the Barr injury and the young players in the secondary. It seems like everything has been out of kilter. That what we saw a year ago, and teams change so quickly, personnel-wise, that it's just not having the. Not every team's obviously gone through this, the OTAs, the preseason, the rest of it, but it seems to be affecting the Vikings on defense a lot.
Well, and you throw in the fact that you miss Jerry Gray, your secondary coach, moves on and goes within the division, so you miss a coach. Then you've got the formulation of kind of almost a 3-man defensive coordinator group with the head coach and Andre Patterson and the coach's son at linebacker. So it's like you've got a lot of moving parts behind the scenes as well. So you talk to every coach, though, and there's no excuses. It really doesn't matter. These guys they're all paid to go out there and compete and perform. And, so yes, you can add it all up and say, wow, maybe we're not seeing it as clearly because with all these missing pieces and moving parts, it's kind of expected. But these guys, like everybody else, had to learn on the fly with no offseason. and they got to go out there and do it.
Like Drew Samia. Learning on the fly.
And you know what? I know he took his lumps a little bit in the second half of last week, and it's kind of poached out there where he got hump moved on a pass rush. Hey man, that's going to happen. That is going to happen, especially it'll happen to veterans out there. I thought Drew went out there with the right sort of tenacity. He approached the run game the right way. He was big and active and physical on his combo blocks up to the linebackers. He moved well in space, better than I expected. I like the first game that he had. I hope he doesn't lose any confidence. I hope he remains confident in his abilities because I think he's got a lot of potential.
They drafted Ezra Cleveland as well. We haven't seen him play at all. I mean, the Vikings had, 15 draft picks, which sounds good on paper, but you don't want too many of those guys playing right now, especially not having the benefit of a real training camp in preseason.
Yeah, and a little bit of a position move for him as well. He was a left tackle in college, and now they're asking him to play left guard. And, maybe for some on the outside looking in, that's not a big transition, but it's a big deal to these guys to feel comfortable and to feel fast and effective. So, he's probably just in that mode where he's swimming a little bit mentally, but hopefully he can put it all together and be a nice piece of depth for our offensive line.
Ben, simply put, how much is at stake for the Vikings today?
A lot. I mean, this is your approaching desperation mode. I think they've all seen and heard what happens to a team that start 0-3 when it comes to playoff implications. Even with the extra playoff team added this year, you've got a long, tough road if you start 0-3. And I think more importantly, we've got to start seeing some improvement out of this team. You can't go the opposite direction. It's one thing if you lose a game like you did last week, but to not improve from week 1 to week 2, that's the concerning part.
Ron, does Cousins, how much does Cousins think audible? He comes to the line of scrimmage. Is he kind of going by the script all the time? Or is he, as a veteran quarterback, being able to see things and change things on the fly when he gets to the line of scrimmage?
So Kubiak and I had a conversation at TCO, and I asked him that, and I told him, my experience with Peyton Manning and watching what he did.
Right.
He said that's up to Kirk. So if Kirk's ready, he's willing to give him the keys. But he said Kirk has to show him that, hey, if I make a check, this is why I'm checking it. If I change the play, this is why I'm changing it. And this is new. Kirk and Kubiak are new. I mean, even though, yes, he was here last year, Stefanski had the keys to the offense. Kubiak was just a helper. Now with Kubiak taking over, he has to gain that trust in Kirk to say, if you completely change my play, what are you going to do? And that's why, honestly, we would have meetings that would start at 8 a.m. and we would go till 10 a.m. because of Peyton Manning, because he was so critical in every single change. And I did the grunt work. I had to do photocopies and all. I was changing stuff mid-practice because Peyton wanted to change it. And so I want to see Kirk do that, but I want to go back to what Ben said about Drew Samia. With his size, he makes some great combo blocks. His arm strength to be able to hold off and you'll see it here, hold off the 3 technique and then work up to the linebacker. If that's his strength, run downhill at him because he is good at that. Don't force him to do something he's not good at. We know Elflein was good at getting out, running the zone outside. If Samia's better inside, run it inside. And that's quick on the fly, but it's being a pro and saying that we know his strengths.
Again, you can't put yourself in 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 8 all the time. That's what the Vikings have been doing. With Dalvin Cook, you should not be in that position.
Yeah, and when Dalvin gets going, we all see it. It feels like, okay, this is Dalvin's game, and then we don't see him again.
Right.
And so hopefully if he starts off well, because he probably will. They've started off well both games. Continue it after that.
How about go ahead, Ben.
Can I point out one thing that's interesting right now as we're going through warm-ups is I was watching Drew Samia, and he did the brush of his jersey. I guess they're doing field goal protection. I'm like, is he going to be used as a tight end? He's declaring eligible. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to see something, a new wrinkle in his offense. Oh, it's going to be awesome. No, now I'm disappointed. Now, you're just doing field goal protection.
So what happens when this final huddle? Who's doing the talking here? Well, we know it's Anthony Harris.
So they're trying to find a voice. Everson Griffin was always that guy for, 10 years? 9 years?
Yeah.
So when you have a guy like Everson, I think the last maybe 5 years of his career took that over. They've tried Kirk Cousins. They've had Dalvin Cook in there. Now it's Ant Harris. We don't know who the guy is going to be. Maybe it's Daniil, but somebody has to get these guys going. If they win this game, I want to see Ant Harris in there every time because then he's the guy.
He'll be the guy.
Well,
he's got a big voice.
You that superstitious? You that superstitious? It's got to be that guy.
If they win, he's the guy. Put him in there.
All right, guys. We're going to take a break right now, about half hour away from kickoff, as we look at Anthony Harris between the Minnesota Vikings and the Tennessee Titans right here at U.S. Bank Stadium. Stay with us.
George, I look at just hit the crowd get hyped.
Welcome to U.S. Bank Stadium, home of your Minnesota Vikings. Today's Week 3 matchup features the visiting Tennessee Titans versus your Vikings. And now, a special performance by your Minnesota Vikings Skol line. Please welcome your Minnesota Vikings Skol line, presented by Hy-Vee. the Skol Line, presented by Hy-Vee.
Always great to hear from the Skol Line. Welcome back to Vikings Pregame All-Access, and welcome back, Mark Rose, along with Ron Johnson. Welcome back. Let's take a look as well at the Miller Lite Week 3 game slate. And, Ron, we got some doozies, especially tonight and tomorrow night, as we look at the NFL schedule. The Bears and the Packers right now, 2-0. The Bears are the Bears. Somehow they always manage to get off to a 2-0 or 3-1 start. And they go, are they doing it with mirrors, or how are they doing it?
Luck.
Yeah, okay, there's that.
I mean, if you look at the run game for the Bears, it's okay. The passing game for the Bears, terrible.
Oh, my goodness.
So the defense is just doing it. The Falcons are going to run it up on them, though. Like, they can't keep up with the Falcons.
Well, the Falcons, I think, have one player. I think he's out because of COVID. I think he's missing today's game. Let's look at the key games. As we look at the schedule here tonight. The Jets are playing, my goodness. The Packers against the Saints on Sunday Night Football. I believe Devontae Adams from Green Bay and Michael Thomas from St. New Orleans both are out of that game. So are we burying Drew Brees just a little too early right now? Do you think he's still got something left in that right arm of his?
Well, originally I had picked the Saints, but now looking at Aaron Rodgers is used to not having a receiver, so Devontae Adams being out, he'll find a way. They lead the NFL right now in rushing. So the fact that they lead the NFL in rushing, they'll be fine. This is the reason why they set this team up this way, like the 49ers did last year. Let's get a bunch of running backs. We're going to draft a running back. We already have 2 running backs. And we're just going to run the ball so Aaron can win games when he needs to, but he doesn't have to.
But wait a minute. I thought the Packers were going to be upset because they drafted a quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be happy at all. They should have drafted another position player.
Aaron Rodgers wasn't happy. But when you're winning and you're not getting sacked because you don't have to pass every single play, you find a way to get happy.
Tomorrow night is a real heavyweight battle in the AFC. The Chiefs at the Ravens. The scoreboard are going to be able to keep up with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
I think the over-under on that game is 100 right now.
It's going to be like a college football game.
But the one thing I've noticed about the Ravens, Lamar Jackson is having a terrific season. Like, everybody assumed he's a running back. He can throw the ball, too, and he has some weapons. When you look at Pat Mahomes, though, he is the future of the NFL. That offense is extremely innovative. And when they go head-to-head, they both rise to the occasion. So it's going to be a lot of big plays. It's going to be a lot of magic. And we know the one thing Pat Mahomes does well, he never gives up on a game. So you cannot ever count the Chiefs out.
And we also have a big game this afternoon with Dallas at Seattle. Dak Prescott against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks team, and that's playing awfully well. So that should be another intriguing matchup today.
Yeah, and Dak Prescott, I mean, if you look at the win against the Falcons, it wasn't just his arm. It was a team effort. The running backs are doing a good job. And so maybe McCarthy's figured it out that Garrett couldn't, because Dallas is playing well.
Well, Ron, but that brings, speaking of individual, let's get into our Mystic Lake fantasy outlook as well. We can kind of dive around the league and look at some of the players to watch. There were a ton of major injuries in week 2. How do you think this is going to affect the fantasy landscape?
Huge. I mean, if you look at the fantasy landscape of these guys, and we're going to go with the sure bet of the week in Dak Prescott.
Really?
The reason why? The Seahawks, their defense, they've allowed 831 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and they have a 96.8 passer rating. But when you think about the Seahawks defense, they've given up 25 points to the Falcons. They gave up 30 points to the Patriots. And so this defense doing what they can do, but they are giving up a ton of points. And I think it's because they know Russell Wilson is going to play and come back as well. But you don't want to do that against Dallas.
It's not like I don't believe you, but let's go to our expert right now. With all the injuries right now, fantasy football in particular, substitutions in your lineup, let's go to our fantasy football expert, Paul Charchian, to dig into some deep sleepers that you can potentially use into your Week 3 lineup.
Hello, everyone. I am Paul Charchian from GuillotineLeagues.com, your substitute teacher, with some last-minute help for those in a pinch looking for a last-minute substitute player to fill in for your roster. Here are 3 mostly available guys who you can pick up and start today. San Francisco running back Jeff Wilson is a sneaky play for anybody looking for a touchdown. With Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman out, Jeff Wilson's going to split carries with former Viking Jerick McKinnon. Now, McKinnon's going to get a lot of the pass receiving duties, but Jeff Wilson is going to see the goal line work. Last year, they gave him 6 carries from inside the 5-yard line, and he scored on 4 of those 6 carries. Now, They won't have Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think that means they're going to emphasize the running game and expect Jeff Wilson to get plenty of carries. Chargers running back Josh Kelly got 25 touches last week in a 1-2 punch with Austin Eckler, and man, does he have a tantalizing matchup this week. The Panthers are on deck with a historically bad run defense. They've given up running back touchdowns in 14 straight games. And over those 14 straight games, opposing running backs are averaging 2.5 touchdowns per game. 2.5. Now, even better, the touchdown guy for the Chargers seems to be Josh Kelly, not Austin Eckler. He has had 6 carries inside the 10-yard line already. Our third and final substitute today is Washington tight end Logan Thomas. In the rich history of quarterbacks turned tight ends like, well, I guess that never happens, but that doesn't change the fact that he is a big, athletic tight end with a great matchup. Goes up against Cleveland. They've already allowed 3 tight end touchdowns this year, and they've allowed the 2nd most receptions and the 6th most yards to tight ends. Logan Thomas is kind of an unknown for most people, but he's been on the field for 91% of Washington's plays, and only Darren Waller and Travis Kelce have been targeted more than Logan Thomas among tight ends. There you go, 3 substitute players you can inject into your lineup at the last minute. Now, back to you, Rosie.
Thanks much, Charge, for those insights on the Fantasy Football League, and good luck with your team today. Let's check in now with the performance by the Minnesota Vikings cheerleaders. All right, Mark Rosen back with Ron Johnson. And Ron, we got about 45 seconds to kind of hit your 3 big keys to this football game in order for the Vikings to break into the win column today.
Yeah, well, the first one I'd say they have to force Ryan Tannehill to beat them. Let Derrick Henry get stopped early. 3rd and long is the key. So force Tannehill to beat you is one. The second one is Kirk needs to find other receiving weapons not named Thielen early in the game, like Justin Jefferson, Irv Smith, Kyle Rudolph. He has to throw to some other targets. And then lastly, Kubiak. Get innovative with the offense. Motion some guys around, do some shifts. The motions are going to help Kirk figure out the coverage as well as the young receivers figuring out the coverage. And you do that, I think you can win this game.
Well, let's see if they're listening to you, or will listen to you, Ron Johnson. Always a pleasure working with you on this show. Thank you for watching Vikings Pregame Access. Reminder, be sure to tune into CBS right at noon for a kickoff and join us 1 hour after the game, myself and Pete Bursis for Vikings Postgame Live on Vikings.com. The Vikings and Tennessee Titans coming up next. Stay with us.
the end zone. They're stealing. Touchdown! Intercepted by the Minnesota Vikings.
You get on that horse, you better